On this episode of China Uncensored, ever wonder what the Communist Party cares about most? The answer will surprise you. I spy with my little eye a People's Liberation Army Navy Type 815 Auxiliary General Intelligence ship. And finally, make sure you're not sitting in the splash zone when China's housing bubble bursts. This is China Uncensored. Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. If there's one thing the Chinese Communist Party cares about, it's sincerity. Party members are just so sincere about listening to the people, says party mouthpiece People's Daily. They also say China deserves recognition for sincerely promoting peace around the world. And my heart trembles when I think about how sincere China is in the South China Sea. Actually, I'm pretty sure the Global Times is right about that one. I mean, setting up military bases is a sincere commitment. So what happens when some no good but duly elected Hong Kong lawmakers aren't sincere? Well, they must be punished. Newly elected lawmakers in Hong Kong have to take an oath of office. And of course, it must be done sincerely.
Anyone should take the oath accurately, solemnly, and sincerely.
But 6 of them made changes that
showed no respect to Hong Kong's basic law.
So the Communist Party showed just how sincerely they respect Hong Kong's basic law by disqualifying those lawmakers. That's right, instead of asking them to retake the oath, they kicked them out, even though they were properly elected. I'm kidding, of course. It was the Hong Kong High Court that made that decision. Beijing totally, definitely had absolutely nothing to do with it. Except for the part where Beijing issued an interpretation of the basic law that said lawmakers should be disqualified for taking oaths in a manner which is not sincere or solemn, basically forcing the courts to kick them out. 2 legislators were expelled back in November and the other 4 on July 14th. So how did these no-good elected officials take their oaths? Well, Nathan Law added a quote from Gandhi before he gave the oath. "You can never imprison my mind?" That's very insincere. I mean, he's pretending not to know that Chinese labor camps have had brain imprisoning technology for years. With the loss of these 6 seats in the Hong Kong legislature, it means the pro-democracy lawmakers won't be able to veto the other 40 more or less pro-Beijing lawmakers. And a lot of Hong Kongers are scared that Beijing will eventually show just how sincerely it respects Hong Kong's basic law by issuing an interpretation that the Communist Party should take over Hong Kong entirely. In other news, India and China might be getting ready to have a war again. Only unlike the one they fought in 1962, now both countries have nuclear weapons. Yes, we might have a good old-fashioned war between 2 nuclear powers, which has never happened before, except for the 1999 Kargil War between India and Pakistan, which was over a border dispute. But not to worry, this latest conflict between India and China is also over a border dispute. My favorite state-run media, the Global Times, is saying war is on the table. Indian media have reported the government gave a go-ahead for the emergency purchase of weapons for a short, intense war. Not a specific one, but just in general. The issue centers around a border dispute here. The Chinese military has been doing live-fire drills in nearby Tibet, which resulted in rumors of Indian casualties, though both sides deny that. But there are reportedly troops along the border. This is not looking good. Can we get Xi Jinping to maybe watch Dangle again? We'll have more on this as it develops. And over to southern China, where the region has been suffering from heavy flooding. Dozens have died and the damage is widespread. This really is a terrible tragedy. But if you'd like to offer any prayers or words of support, just be sure you don't include candle or prayer hand emojis on your Weibo posts because the government has been banning them. That's because people were using those emojis on Weibo when they were talking about the recent death of Chinese human rights lawyer Liu Xiaobo. Just be careful though. Apparently some people think the prayer emoji is actually a high five. So make sure people don't think you're high-fiving their terrible tragedy, because that would be insincere. Speaking of crazy things, the Communist Party has banned Pooh, Winnie the Pooh. If you searched for Winnie the Pooh on Weibo last weekend, you'd get a message saying this content is illegal. Wrapping your head around that might be as difficult as stealing honey from a hive of bees. No official reason was given for the ban, but here's everyone's best guess. It's not just China Uncensored that has noticed a more than passing resemblance between Chinese leader Xi Jinping and everyone's favorite Pooh Bear. Chinese netizens have also noticed, repeatedly, for years. Though the ban did happen right after we made the comparison. Maybe Xi Jinping watches China Uncensored. He certainly does if you can trust China Uncensored's comment section. Hey, wait a minute. In any case, Xi, if you are indeed watching, you don't need to feel threatened. Just remember, Pooh had a best friend named Christopher. All in all, the incident only spawned 230,000 news articles about Xi Jinping. I'm sure no one in China's vast censorship apparatus is going to be fired over this. Anyway, if you've been feeling concerned about the obstruction, don't worry. Pooh has now been unblocked. In other news, according to a new survey by the Who Run Report, half of China's millionaires want to leave China. Remember that the next time you hear about how great everything is in China, since as soon as people get some money, their first thought is to get out. Why? Well, according to the report, education and pollution are driving China's rich to emigrate. But also, 84% of those surveyed are also worried that the government will devalue the yuan. So where do China's rich want to go? Apparently not the UK. Most want to move to the US, unlike those US businesses that want to move to China. Speaking of US companies, the Chinese regime has laid out some pretty scary new cybersecurity laws. You see, they don't like the idea that Chinese user information might be stored outside of China where the Communist Party can't access it, stored just out of reach, like that sweet, sweet honey. So they're requiring foreign companies to store their data inside China. That also gives the regime unprecedented access to foreign companies' technology. And Apple has jumped on the bandwagon. Well, it's less of a bandwagon and more of a terrible idea wagon. But the Chinese regime has put a lot of pressure on Apple over the years, banning iTunes, movies, and iBooks, for instance. It's not just Apple either. The Chinese regime has also targeted Microsoft. Now, you'd think companies like Apple and Microsoft would get the hint, but instead, they're doubling down on their China operations. Apple jumps to comply with Chinese censors. And now, Microsoft is working with the Chinese knockoff of Google, Baidu, to make driverless cars. Actually, driverless cars in China could be a big step to improve safety conditions on the roads, especially since it only took a little tap for this truck to turn all Last Action Hero. Don't worry, it was carrying paper. No one was killed, thank goodness. And don't go anywhere, we'll be right back with a story about a Chinese spy ship that came a little too close for comfort to US shores. Oh, Pooh! Are you watching on YouTube? Did you know you can see the full half-hour episode if you go to our website, ChinaUncensored.tv? The most wonderful thing about Tigger is that Tigger keeps himself educated on the latest current events with China Uncensored.